All right. So that was a wonderful session on BrowserStack test platform and awesome keynote. And we are amazed with detailing what Nakul and Arvind gave. And indeed, there are a lot of insight. I'm sure you people would have taken it. And hope you had a great break and you're ready for the next level of discussions on mobile test automation in false lessons learned. By the way, my name is Ajay Vishambaran, Director of Quality Engineering BrowserStack, having 2.5 decades of experience in quality engineering. And I love solving problems. And I was lucky enough to be part of SAS, PAS, even system engineering, and on solving A-level problems. Today we have Sonal Kandelwal, Engineering Manager at Glassdoor, and who handles estate activities. And I'm amazed to have her with me today to share experience, what she learned. Sonal, welcome to you.
Thank you, Ajesh. Thanks. Hello, everyone. I am Sonal. I am an engineering manager in test here at Glassdoor. I have total 15 years of experience in the industry with last 10 years in specifically in mobile automation, building frameworks for mobile native apps. Automation is my passion and yeah, I just love that as a challenge and try to, build a framework that's scalable and reliable. Outside of work, I have two young kids who I keep chasing around them the whole time in my home. So, yeah, that's me. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely, that's awesome. And we understand in today's world, handling everything one together, it's absolutely amazing. Thanks, Sonal. Yes.
Sure.
And I'm really amazed to, and always the people who looks at Glassdoor, there is a lot of activities and people always look at for references. It is a go-to place is Glassdoor. Let me get it review. What is it? Is that a good company or what is the feedback? Everybody goes to Glassdoor. So I'm sure. And different devices, different ways people could log in. And I'm sure validating and making sure nothing is broken. Would you be able to share your journey in real experiences in terms of the problem pitfalls or anything? How do you handle all these particular problem to making sure it's a customer experience is must and beautiful? How do you handle that,
Sure,
Sonal?
sure. I'll start with like a little bit of a history here because I think it has a lot of detail there where how I got here in terms of how I think about quality of apps or automation. So this started back in 2016. I was working on one of the projects. This was mobile was like very new at the time. In the sense like we didn't have a lot of automation or any automation in place. Mostly we had web browser automation in place. We had automation on set top box and which was running on TV. To my surprise, I was like, why don't we have anything on mobile? And like again, I was not an engineering manager back then. I was like a software SDET. And so we were thinking about this, like, why can't we do something like this on mobile? And then we were like, okay, let's try out to see what is out there. We didn't even look at like what technologies were there. So we were like, okay, let's try out some things. We started doing a smaller POC on like whatever devices we could get our hands on in our office and just started doing this POC. Again, Android, if people have worked on mobile automation, they would know like Android is little straightforward when it comes to setting it up, whereas iOS comes with its own challenges. Like you have signing certificates, you have provisioning profiles, you need developer account, and you need basically a lot of hand holding with developers, at least back then. Nowadays it's gotten a lot simpler, but back then it was like you need a lot of their time to get this set up initially. Okay, so that was the biggest challenge. And then once we went past that point and we were able to build this like very small, five, not even five tests, probably five tests, and we were able to run them on both Android and iOS. We were like, oh, we could like then see, oh, this is now something that we can scale upon and what value it could bring in the future, like when you work on those things. So from there, this is 2016, we are in 2025. I've worked on like different projects where in some cases we built frameworks from ground up, in some cases they were already built and we were just enhancing them. So when it comes to Glassdoor, I joined 4 years ago, and then yeah, we didn't had any automation at the time. We were starting to, like, the company was starting to invest in automation solution for mobile native apps. And like you said, like, over the years, the mobile, releases have gotten faster, the cycles have become shorter. So there is this challenge of, like, how do you make sure that the apps are healthy and, like, we are able to release them on time, and they are like good user experience, they're giving good user experience, and with like number of devices and OSs out there. So with that, like, we now have built an automation framework which we are able to use reliably and consistently every, like, every release cycle. And so we do bi-weekly releases. We have this automation framework or suite that we can rely on. It runs the tests, we get the results. Again, it's not that we have 100% automation on anything, but like, it takes a huge, like, lift for us. That's the heavy lifting that automation is doing for us. And we focus on, like, more, you know I would say, complex scenarios. When we want to release, like, make sure that we have human eyes on those. So there is that piece which is there. So yeah, that's like the high level. I would
That's
say.
interesting. And then, so probably while doing all these things, and could you add what are those contributing factors that made more success on it? Is there anything you
Mhm.
want to add?
Sure, sure. So yeah, going back again to the part where when I joined the company, right, we were very small. The QA team was very small. It was just one me. Like, I joined the team, and we had no automation in place. Our releases were sort of like not scheduled. We were like, okay, we can release today. Oh, is it ready? Let's release it today. And then if it's not ready, okay, take your time. There was no like cadence as such, right? And so we started thinking about that. And then during that time, we were like, okay, only one has did. So we thought that we were using XUIT for iOS and Espresso for Android. I'm giving this example because it will help you, like, understand, like, why it's important to choose the right tools for your teams, right? It's not always like, oh, somebody said this tool, so this will work for me. No, it might not work for you. So we started with XUID and Espresso with the idea that the SDET can build the framework, and then developers can start writing the tests, right? And then anybody in the QA world knows that that's a tough thing to to sell. You build, like, you build the framework, but then again, developers, like, it's a very hard thing for us to push as well, and then the bandwidth and everything. So our thought process at the time was like, we build this framework, it's in their language, in Swift or in Kotlin, so they should be able to write these tests. There was no way that I could write a Java framework and then expect my developers to, hey, clone this code, can you please write this test or fix this test? That was not going to happen. So that was the decision we made, and we built these frameworks. But over the time, we realized, like, that the vision didn't actually, work for us. Like, the devs didn't had the capacity to go and add those tests. And so we were like, okay, what do we do now? And for us to find more SDETs with that capability of Swift and Expresso was a little bit harder. Again, we didn't want to increase the team size and so on. So what is my other solution? Right. So we gradually made the decision to move away from those two and switch to Appium. And then we built a brand new framework from scratch. We, like, invested heavily on, like, we wanted to make the framework right, or like with enough, things in place where it could be scalable and we could use it reliably over the years, right? So we started building this framework, and then we had SDETs in our company who were working on web platforms. So if you've worked on Selenium, the transition to Appium is not as difficult as somebody who hasn't worked at all on automation. So with that in mind, we were like, okay, this should work better for us. We could pull in our SDETs, and they, like, yeah, there's a learning curve, but that's still, like, I guess everybody wants to sort of expand their, domain or knowledge in this space. So I, like, they would be interested. So that worked well for us. And then, web engineers helped us build this test suite now that we have. And then it's working well, I would say.
Absolutely nice. That's good to know. And I think you also highlighted, right? I think scaling mobile automation wasn't always smooth. And can you also share any common pitfalls that
Mhm.
could encounter, and what are
Uh-huh.
the any?
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the pitfalls I do see like over the years that I've seen is like trying to automate 100% or like, with that mindset that oh everything has to be automated. In a lot of cases it's not true that everything can be automated, like can be automated. First of all, there will be always some outliers which like it doesn't make sense to automate because it's too complex or it's too time taking. Like sometimes the test case runs for like so long that it loses its value and becomes flaky during that execution. The longer your test, the more chances of it being flaky. Yeah. So to build a scalable framework, I think you need to look at the details when you're designing the framework, right? What all capabilities it need to have. What is going to be my you know uh, end goal. And then again it also depends on the devices that you want to run on. Again, mobile, again the space is huge, right? You have Android, you have iOS, you have on Android you have a bunch of different OSs that you need to work with. And so again, one of the pitfalls that we see is like oh trying to automate on all these different devices or trying to cover so many OSs, trying to cover so many different you know screen sizes and so on. So with that, I think it easily gets out of hand. In theory, it sounds like, yes, there is this automation and you can run this on, five different devices. Like if I go and talk to somebody, I'll tell like, I have this automation suite. They'll be like, why can't you run on 10 different devices? Right. But then as you run on those devices, you will see like every device has its own a little bit of, nuance there where you'll need to add those checks in your framework. And the more checks you add, the more I would say it will start becoming like flaky or complex to maintain. So one of the key things I think is to like have that device metrics defined for which you want to run those tests, right? We here at Glassdoor are like data driven, so we look at our data analytics and see what devices our users are using and try to create a coverage matrix based on those. Yes, there are some risks involved, like okay, I didn't cover like all. Of course, you cannot cover all of the devices, so you got to make that choice, and that's the pitfall that I see. Like we always think like, oh, why can't we do all of this with automation? But it's not realistic. And then slowly as you start trying to fix for everything, it'll start breaking. Like it'll take more of your time, more of your team's time to sort of just maintain this framework.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even this reminds me our time while my previous corporates while we were working, we used to test on small form factors, medium form factor, large form factor. There was so much of varieties, and even today that has become more complex. When it has got fragmented such a way that, and I really would understand the complexity what you guys are having it. Absolutely, it's there's a lot to learn, and
Oh,
definitely each and every team will have to play well to make sure the quality is maintained. There,
sure,
absolutely.
sure. And I do remember with that, like we did have, I had one project where we had this code where like, if it is Samsung, do this. If it's Nexus, do that. If it's 7-inch, do this. If it's 5-inch, do that. So like, yeah, it would work probably on all of those devices. But if it failed on one of those, it was like a huge, like it was like time consuming to try to fix those. And then like you sort of, when you start to compare that value that automation is bringing you sort of question yourself like, is it really giving me that value, or like I'm just spending time and time on trying to fix this to make it work on 5? Rather, if it would have worked on 2, at least those 2 would give me valuable results for my releases.
How is the device management? Is that you guys have? Can you just explain how is
Oh,
that?
you that's the favorite favorite question. I like that one. So, uh, devices, right? I work when I gave the example of 2016, we were working on those 2 devices that we had in hand. Then over time I worked in different projects where we were having these devices in our offices, and we would test on those. There are like a lot of challenges when it comes to devices and setting up automation on those, right? You need to have the network consistently like available on that. If it drops, your automation will not run. You need to have like OS upgrade handled. You need to have like maybe sim pop-up that comes up. There are like a bunch of things that happen on devices, battery dead or whatever, right? And so I remember we would like we had these servers machines that we used to call them server machine, and the devices would be connected to it. We would like make sure like everything is there, you know. If the Wi-Fi drops, backup Wi-Fi. If this happens, that, you know, restart if this pop-up comes, whatnot. But they're like we spent so much time and effort on just making sure that these we were able to run it reliably. Now over the years with all the cloud devices that have come, it's like it is such a big relief. You don't have to spend your time on making sure that device has Wi-Fi, making sure device has connectivity, making sure OS upgrade is handled and whatnot, right? You just need to have your test ready and you run it, it'll take care of it. So that's my favorite actually. And it gives you so many capabilities these days. You know, you can have your fingerprint and location spoofing and whatnot. Before, if I had to do a location spoofing, like God knows how I I would do that. I don't even remember, but yeah, like the device clouds have made it so much easier, and there's like you can actually spend the time that you were spending on setting up all of this to actually invest in your framework, in your test stability and whatnot. So yeah, like it's a huge thing. And one other thing I think with the cloud devices I feel like is with the previous model, right, where we were running on our server, the reporting part was also like very isolated. It was hard to share those reports to anyone, right? If I'm running on my, let's say, machine, nobody else knows what happened, right? How do I share those? Like it is a manual thing where I go and now share these reports. Whereas on devices, on these clouds, right, everything is just available. You just share that link. Whoever wants to take a look at it can take a look at it and just be, you know, it's this all is saving time actually for us. So yeah.
Yes, okay. And I think that's reminds me to understand. So you said about complexities in the network, all those things, and now with the cloud coming in, how did if something goes wrong in terms of during a regression, and how is that helping you out, and how is your SDET able to analyze or say this is a problem or this is a flaky? How is
Sure.
that being handled actually?
Sure, sure. I think one of the biggest things that I am really passionate or I keep pushing my teams for is testability. There is one thing, yes, you create a framework, you build it and all, yes, you write automation, yes, then but the observability part, you know, you gotta review your failures, you gotta do that work. So that is something I keep pushing my team, like I just a reiterative thing that, you know, she's gonna come and she's gonna say this thing. So I keep like it's really important for, you know, an SDET or anybody in QA team to actually review these failures or review these reports to make use of those, right? If they're running and we are not using those reports, it's not adding any value to anyone, right? So what we have in my current project, the way we have set it up is like we have these nightly runs, we have release runs, we have like categorized them in different ways based on our needs. So say nightly runs, we have reports that get generated, we provide enough logging, like we have tried our best to have enough logging in our automation framework so that like I wanted to minimize as much as I can the time that an SDET needs to spend when there is a failure, right? It should be like that quick. That was my aim, but we're still like I think we could make improvements there, but like that's our aim. Like the report and the failure reporting should be that simple that you look at it and you can tell if it's a bug in the app or if it's a maintenance issue with my, you know, automation suite or something. So we have added enough logging there, which every step is being logged. We have screenshots on failures, we have Slack integration where the report will come in your Slack, you can see what failed and what not. We are actually running on BrowserStack, so we have the video recording over there for the whole execution. So we attach that in our reports if anybody wants to go and look at that. But the idea is like you see that report, you review the failure. It should be like simple enough to figure out from there how like whether it's a test failure or a app bug, and then you go and report to your teams like, hey, there is this bug in the app that got introduced or so on. So I think that there are ways probably to like further simplify this for the teams, but yeah, that's something I think we need to look into more.
That's true. That's true. That's an area where there is a lot of improvement can be done, absolutely. And
Hmm.
I think that's where the whole era is evolving towards, and observability is going to be a key
Observability,
player.
yes.
And indeed, even one of the notes that I have for my team is even my team should not be spending a single time on analysis, should be done automatically, and
Should be done
observability.
yeah, yeah. That's where I was getting to. Like, yeah, we need to start looking at, how we can, like, just from the reports itself figure out that, oh, if this is like without a human intervention, if that's possible, like, to figure out, like, oh, based on the pattern, the history of that test, if, like, yeah.
And so I just wanted to take a slight deviation right now. See
Mhm.
now, in the rapid development, what we have it and rapid cycles, everything is going on, right? And how about automation? Is that can we? What is your thought on automation first, or else in sprint automation, so that reducing the manual effort? What is your thought on?
Sure, sure. Oh yeah, we are like we call it in sprint automation. So when I say in sprint, the idea is like whatever is being developed during that sprint, we automate it during that sprint. Okay. So basically, as development is building the feature, we are building the automation for it. Once it's getting closer to the release, like we should have the automation ready to be able to run for these features. Again, like a lot of this depends on your team's bandwidth and like how big your team is, how many features are being worked upon and all of that. So there is this what do I call it, like we always make this decision on like what's critical and what is achievable in that in sprint automation, right? Again, we try to align with our business and make sure like we are automating, let's say, P0 test cases for sure within sprint. If we are able to get to P1s, yes, we do those as well. But the criteria is like P0 have to be automated within the sprint, right? So we are trying to follow that. Again, like if you know QA is always short staffed or something, so P0 and then P1s and then P2s. But yes, we do want to test left, we want to shift left where most of our testing is happening within the dev cycles, and we provide early feedback, even with automation, like when you are writing those automated tests and you are running them in sprint, you kind of catch those bugs, right? Like because the feature is being developed, if you run the script, like your script is ready, the feature is partially ready, you start running it, you can catch those bugs early on. And that's the whole idea, like provide the early feedback to devs. Don't like less finding bugs during release, more finding during the dev cycles.
Definitely, that will reduce the cost of quality itself. That's where the whole idea is.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
So, is there any favorite framework that you have, Sonal, wanted to share with our audience?
Sure, sure. So from my experience, like I said, I've worked on XUIT and Espresso. I've worked on Calabash with Cucumber. I've worked on Appium. And then in my experience, like I feel like Appium is wholesome that way. Like we are able to, I've been able to use it in different projects more consistently, and being able to build automation framework that can work on both Android and iOS. It has like good community, it has good documentation, and like again with Expresso and XUIT, you have to have different, you know code bases, which is usually not ideal for, if it's a single QA team, it's usually not ideal. So that was that, and they have very limited documentation. If you've gone through those, like there's not enough community there. With Appium, there is a lot out there. So there is that. Plus, it's mostly, at least in mobile, the way I've seen it, like we have web SDETs who are now moving on to mobile or expanding to mobile. So web SDET have typically worked on Selenium, and it makes it easier for them to start working on Appium. And like for me, it has been Appium. Like I really prefer that. It has worked well for us in my team. So yeah, and yeah,
Any thoughts for people who struggling in terms of setting it up their mobile test automations? So can you
sure.
give your
Sure,
advice?
sure. Yeah, I think what I would suggest is like start small, like start with, like don't aim for like, oh, I will do 100% automation or something. Just start small, build those pieces, build those building blocks. Like focus on the framework, what all capabilities you want. Again, your product vision, like you also want to look at your product. What is my product's need? And then like some decisions will be based on that, right? Yeah, say you have face ID login, you have fingerprint login, you want to think about those capabilities. If you don't have login, you don't want to think about those probably, right? I'm giving an example here. So for us in Glassdoor, uh, we have video capability now on the apps, right? So there is this video playing, and then this was not the case when we built the framework, right? Back then it was only searches and whatnot, like job search and so on. So we built the framework based on that. But the way we built it, like now we added video on our apps, we are able to add video capability in our automation framework. So the even though you don't have that feature at the time, think about like what if tomorrow there is this thing that I want to add in the framework. How easy or hard would it be to add something new to this, to scale it? And so if you ask those questions in the beginning and think through those and build it, I think that's the starting point. And the next advice I would have is like, don't leave it, it's not one and done. Like, okay, I built it once and that's it. It's not that. If you have worked on these automation suites and frameworks, there is like, it requires constant involvement, and as your product evolves you have to kind of make adjustments to your framework. It's a scalable, like it's constantly evolving framework, I would say. Even though like core part, yes, is mostly like, okay, you set it up once, but you will have features that will keep adding, like because apps are fast developing. So I'm sure like there will be QA things also that you need to kind of incorporate in those frameworks. So I would say start small, focus on your framework first. Again, choose the tools that work for your team. Like it's okay that I said Appium works for me, but it might not work for you, or this thing works for somebody else and it might not work for you. So you make the decision based on your team. What is your team's capability? Do they know like this language that I want to work on? Do they know these tools? How easy would it be for them to learn this new tool and work on that? So again, all of those decisions will help you build that strong framework, which would help you with all the testing needs that you have.
And now there are few teams probably they wanted to optimize. Let's take an example. Their regression suite run for 1 hour, and
Mhm.
you wanted to run it in 30 minutes or
Mhm.
less than that. Is there any other advices you could
Yeah.
suggest?
You say 1 hour, I'm laughing. Okay. Because like none of my suites run for an hour. They are like easily like 2-3 hours at the minimum. But yeah, I think parallel execution is one thing. Like we do schedule a lot of parallel jobs so that like we get faster, results, and it is just easier to have all of those. Like I run everything. You get the build tonight. You run few parallel jobs and you get those results. There is also like categorization. Not everything has to run on everything, right? So you choose, like you define those metrics. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I want to reiterate this here again. Like you maybe you only want to run p zeros on your release candidate. You want to run rest of your regression during your nightly runs, right? It depends on how your team is structured, how your release cycles are, but basically with a combination of these, we run our jobs nightly, which gives us early feedback. Like say everything that got merged today, we got a build tonight. We run nightly regressions on those to make sure like we are catching any bugs that got introduced. And then we run a subset like a P0 and P1s when there is a release candidate which is actually going to go out there. So our hope is between these two combinations, and the bugs should get caught. Like yeah, again, if I hold everything at the end at the release cycle, and if I run everything at the end at the release cycle, a, it'll take longer to get the results. B, it's too late already to file, like to now let the teams know, hey, there is this bug. And in app world, like it takes time to like fix things and then ship it. Like there is this review process and all of that, and if the bug slips out there, then it's like a huge pain for everyone involved.
So thank you, Sonal, for that insightful session. And I'm sure a lot of insight and valuable details are given. it was incredible and it was nice talking to you. I did not know how did the time pass. It was nice talking to you, Sonal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. It was nice chatting and definitely like, enjoyed sharing the the experience that I have. Hopefully it helps people out there. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sonal.